No nurse lasted a week with the billionaire sheik until the American nurse broke the rules. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into the story. It was early morning, and the hospital corridor was eerily quiet. Anna Monroe stood in front of the door, feeling a knot form in her stomach. This wasn't just another patient. Grant Al-Mansour, the billionaire sheik, lay unconscious in the luxurious suite, his body connected to life support machines. The man who had built empires, who had a legacy larger than most countries, was now a prisoner of his own body. The nurses before her had lasted less than a week. The weight of caring for such a man had driven them to quit, some in tears, others in frustration. But Anna had no choice. She needed this job. Her mother was fighting cancer, and Anna had no other way to pay for the treatments. She couldn't afford to fail. The door opened with a soft click, and she entered the room. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, but the luxury of the suite was undeniable. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the thick velvet curtains kept the morning light at bay. Grant lay there, motionless, his sharp features softened by the sterile hospital environment. He looked nothing like the powerful man who had been all over the media. No, he was just a body now, kept alive by machines. Anna's heart tugged, but she pushed it aside. She had a job to do. The first few days were uneventful. Her duties consisted of checking his vitals, adjusting his sheets, and wiping his brow. Every task felt mundane, routine. But what struck her the most was how isolated he seemed. No family visits, no phone calls. Just the hum of machines and the soft ticking of time. The first time she truly spoke to him, she had to force the words out. "I know you can't hear me," she murmured softly as she adjusted the drip. "But if you could, I'd tell you how strange it is to be in a room full of nothing but silence and machines. It's like you're stuck between two worlds." She paused, watching for any sign of response. There was nothing, but she felt strangely connected to him, even in his comatose state. She couldn't explain it, but somehow, she believed he was still there. Days passed, and she continued her routine. But then, something changed. It started small. The machine started showing subtle signs of improvement. The heart rate monitor beeped just a little faster, the brain activity chart spiked slightly more than usual. Was it a sign? Anna reported it to Dr. Harris, who was skeptical. "It could just be reflexive movements," he said dismissively. But Anna wasn't so sure. Something about the way his fingers twitched when she spoke to him made her believe he was responding. A week went by, and Anna had done what no nurse before her had been able to do. She didn't just follow the rules. She went beyond them. She talked to him. She treated him as though he could hear her. And then, one night, it happened. She was sitting beside his bed, reading a book to him softly when, for the first time in weeks, Grant moved. His fingers tightened around hers. Anna froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Grant," she whispered, her voice shaking. His eyes fluttered open, slowly, as if he was waking from a long, heavy sleep. It was like a miracle, a moment that would change everything. Anna could hardly believe what she had just witnessed. For weeks, she had been caring for Grant Al-Mansour, the powerful billionaire sheik who had been stuck in a coma, his life hanging by a thread. And now, in the stillness of the night, his fingers had tightened around hers. It felt like a miracle, like something had shifted in the universe. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open, his pupils dilating as he struggled to focus on her. She leaned closer, her breath quickening, unsure if this was real. "Grant," she whispered softly, her voice trembling. His lips parted slightly, as if he was trying to speak, but no sound came. It didn't matter. He was alive. He was waking up. After a year of being trapped in silence, he was finally here, with her. "You're awake," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes as she held his hand tighter. The heart monitor began to beep faster, matching the rapid pace of her heartbeat. Nurses and doctors rushed into the room, but Anna stayed by his side, unwilling to leave his side. She had been the one to connect with him, the one to believe in him when no one else did. For a brief moment, it felt like she and Grant shared a secret, something no one else could understand. Over the next few days, As Grant slowly regained his strength, Anna became his anchor. Despite being surrounded by the best medical team, he only trusted her. She would sit with him, reading to him, talking to him about her life, and sometimes she would just hold his hand in silence. There was a bond between them that neither of them could explain. The doctors were amazed at his recovery, but they remained cautious, warning Anna that it could be a long road ahead. Grant's memory was foggy at first. He remembered little about the accident, and his mind felt fragmented. But there was one thing that was clear. He knew Anna, and that was enough. He would smile at her when she entered the room, his eyes softening. And when she spoke, he would listen, as if hanging on to every word. It was during one of these quiet moments that Grant spoke for the first time since waking up. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible, "for not giving up on me." Anna's heart swelled. Those words meant more than anything. She had expected nothing in return. She had simply done her job, her duty. But somewhere along the way, it had turned into something more. They were no longer just patient and caregiver. They had become something deeper. But there was still so much that needed to be uncovered. There was still the mystery of the accident that had left Grant in such a state. Anna couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something didn't add up, and she needed to find out what it was. One evening, while Grant was resting, Anna decided to look through his medical files. She was careful, knowing that some things were better left untouched. But her instincts told her otherwise. As she sifted through the papers, she found something unusual, a report from the accident reconstruction team. The brakes on Grant's car had been tampered with. This wasn't just an accident. Someone had tried to kill him. Her breath caught in her throat. This was no longer just about saving a man from a coma. It was about uncovering the truth, finding out who was behind this and why. Grant had made a lot of enemies in his life. But who would go so far as to endanger his life? Anna felt a cold chill run down her spine. She knew this was just the beginning. She couldn't keep this secret from him. But she had to be careful. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. The mystery surrounding the accident was one thing. But the journey that lay ahead, for both of them, would change everything. And Anna wasn't sure if they were ready for what was to come. The days that followed were filled with a sense of urgency, as Anna's discovery about the tampered brakes lingered in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger than a mere accident was at play. As Grant continued his recovery, she found herself torn between her growing attachment to him and the need to uncover the truth. Her responsibility as his nurse had already crossed into something deeper, something more personal. Every glance, every touch seemed to blur the lines between duty and emotion. But the mystery of the accident haunted her. Anna knew she had to tell him. He had a right to know the truth, but she wasn't sure how to break it to him. One afternoon, after finishing her rounds, she sat by his bedside. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the faint hum of the Ford drip. Grant was awake, his eyes focused on her as he noticed the tension in her posture. "Anna," he said softly, his voice still rough but gaining strength each day. "You're holding something back from me. I can feel it." His words pierced through her defenses, and she felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She had been avoiding this conversation, thinking she could keep him safe from the dangerous truth. But now, there was no escaping it. "Grant," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something you need to know. Something I found in your medical records." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "The brakes on your car, they were tampered with. It wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill you." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Grant's gaze hardened, but his face remained emotionless. "Who would do that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna took a deep breath, her mind racing. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. You're not alone in this, Grant. I'm here." He reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. "You've done more for me than anyone else ever has," he said, his voice softening. "I can't believe you've stuck by me all this time." Anna squeezed his hand, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "You deserve the truth, and we'll figure this out together." Grant closed his eyes for a moment, as if processing the gravity of her words. When he opened them again, there was a determination in his gaze that hadn't been there before. "Then let's get to work," he said firmly. "I'm not going to let anyone get away with this." Over the next few days, Anna and Grant began to piece together the mystery surrounding the accident. They combed through his business dealings, looking for anyone who might have a motive. There were plenty of enemies, but nothing concrete. It was a waiting game, a game that felt like it was slowly eating away at them. The tension in the air grew thick as they delved deeper into the investigation. But with every day that passed, Anna noticed something shifting between them. Their connection grew stronger. Grant was no longer just the billionaire sheik she had been assigned to care for. He was someone she was starting to care for deeply. The lines between nurse and patient were becoming harder to define, and Anna could feel herself falling for him. But she couldn't afford to get distracted. There was too much at stake. The days turned into weeks, and just when they were beginning to feel like they had no leads left, a breakthrough came. Grant's security team discovered something unsettling. A phone number linked to a private investigator who had been shadowing his every move. It was clear now. Someone had been watching him. Someone with a plan. Someone who wanted him dead. The realization hit them both like a punch to the gut. They were getting closer to the truth, but it was coming with dangerous consequences. And Anna couldn't help but wonder, what would happen if they uncovered the identity of the person behind it all? Would it be someone in Grant's inner circle? Someone he trusted? Or someone who had been lying in the shadows all along? It was a terrifying thought, but one thing was certain. They were in this together. And no matter what, Anna wasn't going to let Grant face it alone. As the days passed, the weight of their discovery began to sink in. The fact that someone had been monitoring Grant, tracking his every move, made Anna's stomach churn with anxiety. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, one that was slowly tightening around them. Still, the search for answers couldn't stop. There was too much at stake: Grant's life, his future, and the dangerous truth that they had barely scratched the surface of. Grant had grown stronger each day, his physical recovery impressive. But emotionally, he was still haunted by the fact that someone wanted him dead. He'd always been a man who thrived on control, on power. But now, that very power seemed to be slipping away from him. He confided in Anna during one of their quiet evenings together. "I've built everything from the ground up," he said, his voice low. "But none of that matters if I can't trust the people closest to me." Anna felt the weight of his words, knowing that the people in his life, his business partners, his family, were now all under suspicion. She didn't know who to trust either. She had become emotionally invested in him, and that made the stakes even higher. Could she separate her feelings from the mission at hand? Or had she already crossed a line? That night, after a long day of going through more files, Grant received an unexpected call. His voice dropped as he listened, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. He handed the phone to Anna. "It's the private investigator," he said, his voice barely audible. "He says he knows who's behind it all." Anna's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Who was the mastermind? What did they want from Grant? The investigator's voice crackled on the line. "You've been looking in the wrong places," the man said. "The person you're after isn't some outside enemy. It's someone you trust, someone close to you." The line went dead. Anna stared at the phone in her hand, her mind racing. She had been prepared for any number of scenarios, but this was the last thing she had expected. Who could it be? Who in Grant's inner circle would go so far as to try to kill him? Anna's thoughts were interrupted by Grant's voice. "It's time to confront them," he said, determination in his eyes. "I've had enough of this. I won't live in fear anymore." He stood up, his movements still a bit stiff from the months of recovery, but there was a fire in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was ready to face the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. Anna hesitated. "Grant, this could be dangerous. We don't know who we're dealing with." But he was resolute. "I can't hide anymore, Anna. If I want to move forward, I need to know who's been lying to me. I need to know who I've been trusting." Anna nodded, knowing there was no turning back now. Together, they began to make their plans. The walls were closing in, and they could feel the danger creeping closer, but there was no turning back. The truth was out there, and they were going to find it, no matter what the cost. But even as they prepared for the confrontation ahead, a nagging doubt lingered in Anna's mind. What if the truth they uncovered was more than they could handle? What if it tore them apart instead of bringing them together? The thought lingered in her mind, but she pushed it aside. For now, all that mattered was finding out who had betrayed Grant and why. As Anna and Grant prepared to confront the person who had been behind the attack on his life, the weight of the situation began to sink in. Every step they had taken so far had led them to this moment. There was no turning back now. The information from the private investigator had shaken them both to the core. The person they were looking for wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows. It was someone within Grant's own circle. But who could it be? Who could betray him after everything he had built? As they gathered their resources and formulated a plan, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something far worse than either of them could imagine. Grant stood by the window of his penthouse suite, looking out over the city, his back stiff with tension. He hadn't said much since the call with the investigator, but the determination in his eyes spoke volumes. "We need to act fast," he said, his voice low. "Whoever is behind this is still out there, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Anna nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She had been through so much with him already, but this felt different. This was personal, and it was about more than just saving his life. It was about finding the person who had torn apart his world, the person who had shattered the trust he had built with the people closest to him. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Once we open this door, there's no going back." Grant turned to her, his gaze intense. "I've been living in the dark for too long. It's time to face the truth, no matter what it costs." His words struck Anna deeply. She knew he was right. They couldn't continue like this, living in the shadow of an unknown enemy. They had to take action. With their plan in place, they began the investigation in earnest. Anna worked alongside Grant's team, combing through his business dealings, looking for any clues that might lead them to the culprit. But as they dug deeper, the truth seemed to slip further away. The more they uncovered, the more questions arose. The people closest to Grant, his partners, his employees, even his family, were all suspects. But there was one name that kept surfacing, a name that had been tied to the accident in subtle ways. A name that sent a chill down Anna's spine. Victor Almansour, Grant's half-brother. Victor had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who had never seemed to fit in with Grant's polished image. He had made a name for himself in the family business, but his methods were often questionable. Anna had heard rumors about his ruthlessness, his willingness to do whatever it took to get ahead. But she had never imagined he would go this far. Victor had always been a wild card, but could he really be the mastermind behind the attempt on Grant's life? The thought was unsettling. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Anna realized that the truth they were seeking was far more complicated than she had imagined. And as she looked at Grant, she saw a man who was no longer just fighting for his life. He was fighting for everything he had ever built. The final confrontation was coming, and Anna could feel the tension in the air, thick with anticipation and fear. Would they be able to expose the person responsible before it was too late? Or had they already walked into a trap set by someone they thought they could trust? The answers were just beyond their reach, but one thing was certain: they couldn't stop now. The stakes had never been higher, and with each passing day, the truth seemed more elusive. But Anna wouldn't give up. Not now. Not when she had come this far. The last pieces of the puzzle were waiting to be revealed, and no matter the cost, they would find them. The tension was palpable as Anna and Grant sat in the sleek, dimly lit conference room, staring at the digital files spread out before them. The name Victor Almansour echoed in Anna's mind, haunting her. Grant's half-brother, the black sheep of the family, had always been a figure of suspicion, but she never imagined he could be capable of something this dangerous. She had hoped for a clear answer, a direct path leading to the culprit, but the deeper they dug, the murkier the waters became. Grant shifted in his seat, his face etched with a mix of determination and frustration. He had never liked his brother. Victor had always been a thorn in his side, the one person who seemed to resent Grant's success, the one person who constantly challenged his every move. But now, with this new information, everything was different. "Victor's always been jealous of me," Grant said, his voice low. "But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Anna glanced at him, noticing the tightness in his jaw, the subtle signs of pain that still lingered from his time in the coma. She knew this was personal for him, much more than just a business deal gone wrong. This was about betrayal, the kind that cut deep. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Victor had a deep-seated grudge against his brother. The private investigator's report had painted a chilling picture. Victor had been working with a rival company, one that stood to gain a massive share of Grant's empire if he were removed from the picture. It wasn't just about the family rivalry anymore. It was about power, money, and control. Anna felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she realized the full scope of the danger they were in. But she couldn't let fear control her. Not now. Not when they were so close. "We need to confront him," Anna said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. "We can't let this continue. We need answers, and we need them now." Grant looked at her, his eyes softening. "I don't know if I'm ready to face him, Anna. What if he's been behind this all along? What if he's the one who orchestrated everything?" Anna placed a hand on his. "You're stronger than you think, Grant. We've come this far. We can do this together." Grant's gaze lingered on her, his fingers tightening around hers. He had come to rely on her in ways he never thought possible. In the chaos of his life, Anna had become his anchor, the one person he could trust when everything else felt uncertain. "You're right," he said, taking a deep breath. "Let's find out the truth." The plan was simple, but the stakes were high. They would confront Victor, force him to reveal what he knew. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would not go as smoothly as they hoped. Victor was a master of manipulation. He had spent years working in the shadows, always one step ahead. What if he had already anticipated their every move? What if he had set a trap for them? The night before the confrontation, Anna lay awake, her thoughts racing. She couldn't help but think about everything that had led them here: the accident, the mystery, the betrayal, and the growing bond between her and Grant. She had known this was dangerous from the start, but she had never imagined it would take such a personal turn. If they were going to face Victor, they needed to be ready for anything. The next morning, they met with the private investigator to go over the final details of the plan. The atmosphere was tense as they discussed the risks and the possible outcomes. Anna's mind was focused, but her heart raced. This was it, the moment they would finally uncover the truth. But as they made their way to the meeting, she couldn't shake the feeling that this would be the moment that would change everything. As they arrived at Victor's estate, Anna looked at Grant. This was no longer just about finding the truth. This was about confronting the past, facing the betrayal, and reclaiming what was rightfully his. And for Anna, it was about standing by the man she had come to care for deeply, no matter what the future held. The confrontation with Victor was inevitable, and as the day of reckoning arrived, Anna could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had thought about it for days, running through every possible scenario, trying to anticipate how Victor would react. But nothing could prepare her for what was about to unfold. The tension was unbearable as they approached the grand estate. The mansion stood tall and imposing, its stone walls hiding secrets that Grant had never imagined. His hand was tight on the wheel, his knuckles white, but his jaw was set with determination. "This ends today," Grant muttered under his breath. Anna nodded, her heart racing in her chest. It was hard to ignore the knot of fear that had formed deep inside her. She had seen Grant face countless challenges in his career, but this was different. This was personal. This was family. They parked the car outside and walked toward the front door. Anna tried to steady her breath, but the closer they got to the entrance, the more her anxiety grew. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks, but nothing could erase the uncertainty that lingered in the air. Victor Al-Mansour was a man with power, with connections, and most importantly, with a hidden agenda. No one in the family had ever fully trusted him, but now, they had to face the truth head-on. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. The door opened slowly, and Victor stood there, looking at them with a smirk. He hadn't changed much over the years, still impeccably dressed, still carrying that air of superiority. His eyes flickered between Anna and Grant, calculating, assessing. Well, if it isn't my dear brother and his nurse," Victor said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I must say, I didn't expect you to come here, Grant. But I suppose I should have known you wouldn't just roll over and die." Anna couldn't hide her disgust. "We know what you've done, Victor," she said, her voice steady but filled with anger. "We know about the accident, the tampered brakes, and your plans to take over the company." Victor's smirk faded, but only slightly. "You're wasting your time," he said coldly. "I'm not the one behind the accident. I didn't tamper with anything." But his words didn't convince Anna. She had seen through his lies too many times before. There was something in his eyes now, a flicker of uncertainty that told her he wasn't telling the truth. "Then why, Victor?" Grant's voice was sharp, his patience wearing thin. "Why would you go to such lengths to destroy me? What did I ever do to you?" Victor's expression hardened. "You've always had everything handed to you," he spat. The the success, the respect. I had to fight for every scrap, and you took it all. I had to watch you take the throne while I was left behind, treated like nothing more than a shadow. Anna's heart ached as she watched the bitterness in Victor's face. She knew that family struggles ran deep, but this was more than just sibling rivalry. This was about control, about power, and about a man who felt rejected by the very family he had tried to belong to. You're not the only one who had to fight for what they wanted, Victor, Anna said, her voice cutting through the tension. Grant didn't have an easy life. He worked for everything he has, just like you. Victor's gaze flickered to her for the first time, his anger giving way to something more vulnerable, something Anna hadn't expected. But the moment passed quickly, and he turned back to Grant. You'll never understand, will you? Victor said quietly, his tone now cold and resigned. You've always been the golden boy, and I've been nothing more than the disappointment. But it's over now. You've won. Grant's voice was low, filled with a sadness that Anna had never heard from him before. It's not about winning, Victor, he said softly. It's about family. It's about trust. And you broke it. The silence between them stretched, thick with regret and resentment. Victor stepped back, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of everything he had done finally caught up with him. I didn't want this, he whispered. But I couldn't stand being in your shadow anymore. The room was quiet, the only sound the ticking of a clock in the corner. Anna looked at Grant, her heart aching for him. This wasn't the victory he had hoped for. There was no triumphant moment, no sense of satisfaction. Just a deep, lingering sadness that seemed to fill the room. The man who had tried to take everything from him now stood before him, broken and defeated. The truth had come out, but it had come at a cost. And in that moment, Anna realized that some battles didn't have clear winners or losers. Some battles left nothing but scars. The days following the confrontation with Victor were filled with a quiet sense of finality. The truth had come to light, but the aftermath left both Grant and Anna with more questions than answers. The bond between them had been tested, stretched to its limits, but something had shifted between them during those tense moments. It was no longer just about the investigation or the betrayal. They had come to rely on each other in ways neither of them had anticipated. Grant had never been one to show vulnerability, but with Anna by his side, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. The chaos of the past few weeks was behind them, but there was still a lingering weight in the air. Victor had been dealt with, but the damage to Grant's family, his legacy, remained. Yet, in this quiet aftermath, they had found something unexpected, a chance to rebuild. I never thought it would end like this, Grant said one evening, sitting by the window, staring out over the city. Anna joined him, her hand gently brushing his. It's not over, she replied softly. You've come through it. You're stronger than you think. Grant turned to look at her, his expression softer than it had been in a long time. Maybe, but I couldn't have done it without you, he said, his voice low. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected to hear him say those words. For so long, she had been the one offering support, giving him strength. But now, in this moment, she realized that they had become something more. They had become partners in every sense of the word. As the weeks passed, Grant's recovery continued. The emotional scars from the betrayal were still there, but Anna could see the subtle changes in him. He was no longer the cold, distant so he had once been. He was opening up, allowing himself to heal, and it was because of the trust he had found in her. They had been through a storm together, and now they were stronger for it. One afternoon, as they sat together in Grant's study, Anna noticed the way he was looking at her differently. She had seen that look before, but now it carried a weight, a depth of emotion that was hard to ignore. Anna, he began, his voice hesitant, I've been thinking about everything, about us. She looked up at him, her heart racing. What do you mean? I don't want to go back to the way things were, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. I've realized that I can't do this without you. I don't want to. Anna's breath caught in her throat. She had never imagined that this moment would come, but now, standing on the precipice of something new, she couldn't deny the truth that was right in front of her. Grant, her words faltered as he stood and walked over to her, taking her hand in his. You've been my strength, Anna, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I want to build something with you. Not just a life, but a future. The room seemed to hold its breath as Anna looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity, and the vulnerability in them. This wasn't the man who had been guarded and distant. This was someone who had opened his heart, who had found something worth fighting for. Grant, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to be a part of it. With you, she said, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions swirling inside her. He smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made her heart flutter. Then let's make it happen, he said, his voice full of determination. It wasn't just about the battles they had fought or the enemies they had overcome. It was about the new chapter they were ready to write together. A chapter that was no longer defined by betrayal and loss, but by trust, healing, and love. As they stood there, hand in hand, Anna knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. This was only the beginning of their story, and she was ready for whatever came next. Months passed since Grant and Anna had begun their new journey together. The challenges they had faced were far from over, but they had learned to lean on each other, trusting that their bond would carry them through whatever came next. They had rebuilt Grant's empire, but this time, it was different. It wasn't about power or control anymore. It was about creating something real, something meaningful. Together, they had forged a partnership based on trust, healing, and love. The scars from the betrayal still remained, but they no longer defined them. They had found a way to move forward, to build a future that was truly theirs. One sunny afternoon, Grant surprised Anna with a visit to a small art gallery he had heard about. Anna had always dreamed of opening her own art studio, a place where she could showcase her passion for painting and drawing. She had shared her dream with Grant during one of their late-night talks, and although she never expected him to take it seriously, he had listened. Now, standing in front of the gallery, Anna felt a wave of emotion rush over her. "Grant, I can't believe you did this," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. He smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn to help you realize your dream." As they walked through the gallery, Anna could feel the weight of the past lifting off her shoulders. The uncertainty, the fear, it all seemed so distant now. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, with the person who had supported her through the darkest times. In that moment, Anna knew that she had found her place, not just in the world, but in Grant's life. They had come so far together, and as they stood there, surrounded by beautiful art, Anna realized that she had found something more precious than anything she could have ever dreamed of. A partner who loved and accepted her for who she was. As the day drew to a close, Grant turned to Anna with a look of quiet determination in his eyes. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said softly. Anna looked at him, her heart racing. "What is it?" Grant reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it, revealing a stunning ring that sparkled in the soft light. "Anna, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've been my strength, my support, and my heart. I don't want to spend another day without you. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop for a moment as Anna stared at the ring, her breath caught in her throat. She had never imagined this moment. But now, standing in front of the man she had come to love so deeply, it felt like everything had led to this. Her eyes welled with tears, and she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Grant. Yes." Grant's face lit up with a smile that could have lit up the entire gallery. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in what felt like forever, everything felt perfect. They had come through the storm, and now, they were ready to face the future together. The next chapter of their story had just begun, and Anna knew that no matter what life threw at them, they would face it side by side, as partners, as lovers, and as family. As they walked out of the gallery hand in hand, the sun setting behind them, Anna couldn't help but feel that everything had finally fallen into place. This was the life they had built, and it was exactly where they were meant to be.